What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday, Nintendo updated their guidelines page for things like tournaments, as well as content sharing online, and some of it is genuinely concerning, especially if you're maybe a creator covering Nintendo or someone who just wants to share some of their gameplay on social media, and we're going to go over some of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about the Metal Gear Solid Collection, the Master Collection Volume 1, as some recent data mining maybe is pointing towards what could be in Volume 2, and a mysterious website just randomly went live that has people asking a lot of questions around the Dothack series. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton, and if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Masahiro Sakurai, as he's pretty active right now on YouTube as well as Twitter. And in fact, he's very active just playing video games, because we can see this post that started to make the rounds over on Twitter, where he says, "I finished Spider-Man 2 and Super Mario Bros. Wonder last night. It's a problem when the release dates of big titles you should watch overlap. However, I think both are masterpieces that I can recommend to anyone. The new games are amazing, and I'm grateful to them for making them." That got over 2.5 million views on Twitter, by the way. So people certainly follow Sakurai for his opinions on new games and stuff that are coming out. And I actually think he'd do pretty good in terms of commentary on his channel, just around current games as they release. And certainly seems like he has the time to play through them and discuss it. But also, I'm impressed that he's just still really into games. You feel like after going through what he has, creating multiple Smash Brothers games, and in the industry is that long, he'd kind of get burned out even just playing games. But no, he's still seems to be a massive fan to where he can just almost no life Spider-Man 2 and Super Mario Brothers in a weekend. So, impressive stuff there. And I guess we can look forward to Sakurai's thoughts on the next big game coming out, or hey, has he tried King Kong yet? Also, we did get a release date on a Star Wars game from Night Dive Studios, which we can see this posted up over on Twitter with the announcement. That's mark your calendars. Star Wars Dark Forces Remaster is set to release on February 28th, 2024. That's PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series X, S, Nintendo Switch, and PC. This is a classic game from way back in the day. I mean, the visuals, if you kind of take a look at them, you get the idea of the early days of first-person shooters. But this is really cool because Dark Forces led into Jedi Knight, which I still think is an awesome game. Just hasn't been modernized, and I'd like to think that maybe Night Dive is working on that right now. It seems like the obvious follow-up to Dark Forces, and I would like to see Jedi Knight get a bit more than just a basic remaster upscale. I would love to see that game actually get an almost maybe a remake. There's a pretty cool story there with Kyle Katarn to follow, leading in the Jedi Outcasts, and unfortunately, there are many people who have just not experienced that one. So here's hoping that's next, but Dark Forces, look for that towards the end of February. Oh, and we also had Nintendo announce the next Nintendo Switch Online trial game, which this is over on their website, we can see, and that's Cult of the Lamb. This is from October 25th, 10 a.m. Pacific, to October 31st at basically midnight to end out the month. So you got about a week with it, and Cult of the Lamb is a genuinely unique game. It has this roguelike element to it where you sort of go out from your encampment and get new, like basically currency, new followers, and then it also has kind of the social aspect, a bit of Animal Crossing, and it plays into kind of the cutesy aesthetic with some of the different followers you have, and then you go off and sacrifice them for the greater good. So I would recommend checking it out. It's definitely an experience you're not going to find anywhere else. And if you do like it within that trial period, you can buy it at a discounted rate. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and some of their guidelines that they've updated. Whereas previously they were very vague. Now they've gotten a bit more specific, and it seems pretty obvious that it's from stuff they've observed throughout the Switch's life so far. There was a lot of discussion around the tournament guidelines that they had really introduced. I'd say updated, but they definitely introduced a ton of this. That really comes down to smaller tournaments, getting a license from Nintendo, and then following some very strict guidelines, even down to the controllers that are being used having to be licensed by Nintendo, like official products, which could be an issue if you're someone who maybe uses a specific controller when it comes to disabilities or something to make sure you can be competitive in that tournament. seems like something that doesn't line up with what Nintendo wants there. And here's the biggest thing around the tournament scene or the competitive scene with Nintendo. I just don't think they like it very much, and to them, it's just more risk than reward. People already know about their games, and that's typically one of the things that you see a lot of these tournaments and these companies back them for is just notoriety and exposure, and Nintendo clearly feels that they don't need that, so why risk the potential of a scandal breaking out in one of these communities around one of your big name intellectual properties? So Nintendo seems to be just throwing up barriers and putting hurdles in the way that makes it incredibly difficult to run a tournament in hopes that, well, you just don't try. Now, on the other side, they updated guidelines around sharing content, so basically gameplay clips, online, and for the most part, there's standard stuff in there with the questions. Can I sell this content? Like, can I take a game and then sell it completely, rip it, and then obviously not, right? However, there is some interesting stuff at the bottom of these guidelines, and we can see this posted up, where they say with question 11, what do you mean by content that is unlawful, infringing, or inappropriate? So they go down some obvious thing. It violates relevant laws. Okay. But then you go a little further down, and at the bottom, as an example, features video, images, sound sources, etc. that cannot be used in regular gameplay, extracted through game software via data mining or other methods. They also discuss emulation and showing users how to circumvent security measures deployed by Nintendo to protect against infringement of its video games and console systems, naming emulators or other circumvention software, which they've already been kind of active in that. MVG has gone through this a couple of times where Nintendo was pulling his videos down, and he's obviously become more aware and kind of learned from that to sort of skirt around that with Nintendo. Very active at times on YouTube with the copyright button. But the bottom line it's interesting because we just talked about some stuff that was supposedly data mined with Super Mario Brothers Wonder, and a lot of information tends to come from data mining that takes place. So looking at that, if you're a content creator and you're thinking, okay, how do I cover this? My advice would be just don't show any screenshots or video that's being shared from data mining. I'm sure you can still talk about this stuff, but it's getting into kind of that gray area where you're not really sure. And then it's like, okay, is this stopping the press from reporting on relevant information that is then public knowledge? It seems like something that probably will come up with how these guidelines are being much more specific now. Before it was like 3 lines and one just said, oh, it's infringing on Nintendo's properties. Now it's multiple lines, tons of bullet points, just trying to hone in on what they don't want to be shared online. So that's something that I think will eventually come up. Nintendo drops the copyright claim, rips different videos down, and then we see if anyone wants to take a shot with Nintendo in court. I will say the Pokemon Company has done this before when there were files that got out there through data mining of all the different Pokemon that were in, I think, Sword and Shield at the time, and they were very active striking stuff down. So again, my advice, you can discuss it, just don't show necessarily the files that have been pulled from what are usually, let's be real, unlawfully obtained games that find their way off the back of a truck or out the back door of a warehouse somewhere. Next up, speaking of data mining, let's talk about Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1. As it appears, people have been looking through this collection and finding maybe some hints towards what could be in Volume 2. And this has been discussed previously, but now that the final build of the game is just out there, and people are finding references to Metal Gear Solid 4, 5, and Peace Walker. I'm going to follow my own advice here and not necessarily show you the code itself. However, it is out there. People have uploaded these screen grabs to Imager and others, so you can find it fairly easily now. But obviously the implications now, are we really going to see a Volume 2 that has, at minimum, Metal Gear Solid 4 available? And I kind of think we will. Volume 1, if you look at it, especially on the disc that I got it for the PS5, I put a short out unboxing it and just checking it out. Volume 1, like the number 1, is prominently displayed, almost like it is setting up for Volume 2, go figure. And I guess if you have 4, 5, Peace Walker, maybe Portable Ops, and then maybe you have Metal Gear Acid 1 and 2, and I'm just trying to figure out what else you throw in there, maybe some cut content that you've had previously. That could, I think, work into Volume 2, and then they'll probably do the big Master Collection with the slipcover where you get Volume 1 and 2 included. That seems like something Konami would try to pull off in a few years. But 4 is obviously the most interesting one because if you remember, back in the day, they really talked up the cell processor, making that possible, and then we get information later on that there was an Xbox 360 version of it that was running fine. So that brought into question the idea of them actually porting this to current devices because we have seen Xbox 360 games clearly go to the PS4, the Xbox One, the Series, even the Switch. So that's my hope, is that we see Metal Gear Solid 4 in the coming years, and it's done well. Look, they put out this collection. It's all available in one spot, like the beginnings of Metal Gear or Metal Gear Solid. Sure, it's easily obtainable. I would like to see them do a bit more with Metal Gear Solid 4 just because it's never left the PS3. This seems like a good opportunity to celebrate the Metal Gear Solid series, but it's Konami, and I feel like it'll probably be phoned in. It'll be 720p 30 frames, and that'll kind of be it. But at least it would be off of the PS3. Maybe what they do in this collection is they bring back Metal Gear Online and package that in. But it's Konami, so probably not. Oh, and also 2 other things to go along with this collection. If you were unsure, you can see this posted up on Twitter. The Switch version doesn't really come with much on the cartridge. Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake, Metal Gear, Snake's Revenge. Those are what is on the cartridge. Everything else you have to download, so you're talking like 25, 30 gigabytes or something. You still have to download even if you have the physical cartridge, so not much of a reason, I feel like, to get it physically, but maybe you want the box on your shelf. And just in case you want it to smell like Shadow Moses Island, there's also cologne that I think is, 40 euros. So there you go. You can smell like Shadow Moses for the big date coming up. But a Metal Gear Solid collection, it's out now, varying opinions on it, but at least all these games are represented now on current platforms. Next up, we have a mysterious countdown that's just randomly appeared online, and we could see it posted here, currently saying 128 days, and this is at Dothack.com, that, as you figure, has Dothack fans really, really excited at what this could potentially be. I will say 128 days, that is, you're definitely there early with the countdown timer. Now, fans have figured out that this appears to be the final day in February, and I believe it's a leap year next year, so that might be the 29th, which is, again, an interesting time to set this for. And, I mean, the obvious thing here that most people believe, it's either a new Dothack game that I'm going to say probably not, or a Dothack collection. Now, we had Last Recode, and that is a collection of the GU Dothack games, but we don't have a collection of that original set of games, the 4 titles on the PlayStation 2. And I remember playing the first 2 Dothack games, but not the 3 and 4, which is unfortunate because obviously the whole point of this is you follow through with your save data. It will go from each game for you to complete the entire thing, and I was just never able to do that. Also, if you do collect the 4 different games and you put them up on your shelf, you have a cool picture that forms on the spine. And there's fun stuff back then with the PS2 days. There were a couple games that would try to do that. But in this case, I think it makes a lot of sense to release this. One, you can kind of judge the market to see if there is still interest in Dothack. And 2, you figure it'd probably be easy money for Bandai to take advantage of there. And otherwise, there's no easy way to play it. I mean, you can emulate them, sure, but even then, it's a bit weird to go from each game and get that full experience of your save data carrying over. And this was a very interesting game back when it came out because it attempted to mimic an MMORPG, and it also ran alongside of an anime, and they would pack a DVD in, which at that time, big deal because DVDs were brand new. So you had a PlayStation 2 that would play the game, or you could keep up to date on the anime that they would put on a DVD and drop in there. So it was definitely a fun time back then with these kind of releases, and I would certainly pick up a Dothack collection if they decide to release it, but I don't know, apparently we have to wait 128 days till we find out. Maybe this is the release date and they'll give us the announcement here sooner rather than later. I guess we'll see. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the recent financial report for Microsoft when it comes to gaming and Xbox. Now this for them would be Q1. That would cover July, August, and September, which means, yes, the Starfield launch is included. And we could see this that was posted up over on Twitter, which is a good summary from Dom's Playing, who says gaming revenue is up 9% in the quarter. That is above guidance. It equates to $3.9 billion in quarterly Xbox sales. That is an all-time Q1 high. The Xbox content and services rose 13%, which, yeah, it's due to first party, so Starfield and Game Pass. And the odd thing, though, Xbox hardware dipped 7%. Now, Derek Strickland did post up one of his graphs that he made to visualize this a bit easier. And yeah, they are off to a fast start in Q1. Starfield certainly put in a lot of work, obviously brought in quite a bit of revenue for them. The thing that's odd to me, though, is just that hardware. I figured hardware would certainly see a bit of an upswing, and the fact that it's still down from last year is, I guess, a bit head-scratching. I don't know if that's a cause for concern with Microsoft, but maybe as they get a little further in with this Activision deal and they can start putting Call of Duty directly next to their system at retail, it'll help a bit. But we do have this Tom Warren with Satya Nadella, who commented during a conference call saying, on launch, we set a record for the most Game Pass subscriptions added on a single day ever. And that is the most important thing to Microsoft now, is the services side of gaming. Obviously the revenue, sure, but if they can continue to bolster Game Pass, I mean, they'll obviously make a ton of money every single month. Now, they certainly have some pretty serious forecast numbers to hit, and I think it makes sense considering they now own Activision Blizzard. Oh yeah, there's a big Activision game coming up here pretty soon. It's Call of something, but look, we can see this from CFO Amy Hood, covered by Tom Warren for Q2 2024 fiscal guidance. Overall gaming revenue up mid to high 40%. Xbox content and services up mid to high 50%. And I wouldn't be shocked if it ends up even eclipsing that, but clearly the big thing that's going to help out Game Pass right now, with Activision Blizzard being on board and owned by Microsoft, is getting that legacy content in the Game Pass as soon as possible. The only issue is, Phil Spencer has mentioned, the deal took longer than we thought with the regulation, and it's just not ready at this time. So we're going to be looking towards 2024, and I think as soon as possible. So maybe in January, you start to see some of the older Call of Duty and just Activision and Blizzard games start to just trickle in the Game Pass, and every single month they're like, oh yeah, here's a new Call of Duty, here's a Crash Bandicoot, here's a Spyro, and they just kind of go up and down the list and start dropping them into Game Pass and really building that up and getting what I would assume to be a ton of signups. But yeah, all these Call of Duty games they're about to sell, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 that's packaged with that PlayStation 5 Slim, Microsoft's about to make quite a bit of money from that, and jumping 40% out of nowhere, well, that's the Call of Duty and the Activision Blizzard effect. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asked, have you played any of the Dothack games? Okay, 3% played all of them. 13% say yes, but only one or two. That'd be me. 84% say no, I've never played a Dothack game. And if I'm Bandai, I mean, I really go for it here with this. It's a series that technically you could start with this collection. GU, sure, you could technically have jumped into that with Last Recode, but there's still callbacks and different things in the story that is referencing like that original four games that were setting things up. So I would love to see this just for sake of being able to have it in a collection and also have it on a current system. So here's hoping that's what the countdown timer is, and it's not some big troll job or Bandai setting people's expectations up for disappointment. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Max, who says, regardless of how authentic the Datamined is, the colored button layout on a next-gen Switch makes a lot of sense. Whenever I hand over a single Joy-Con to someone inexperienced with gaming, I have trouble explaining to them which button they need to press when holding the Joy-Con horizontally. The colored buttons shown there would solve that issue easily. That's a good point. I just don't really think that much about single Joy-Con play, and it's mostly because I never use it, but I am curious, how many people out there have regularly taken advantage of just kind of passing a Joy-Con off to a friend or whoever? Because I feel like it was an idea that at launch was like, oh, this is really cool. But then people started using it and went, oh, wow, this is not a great way to play games. But maybe that's something Nintendo has figured out. And you're right, the colored buttons, as long as they're there by default and the system knows, okay, A is red or what have you, when you turn the thing sideways, it can then kind of recalibrate as it needs to and just show you the colored button when you're in single Joy-Con play. So that's something I didn't think about, but let me know down in the comments if you're still taking advantage of single Joy-Con play now. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today was Nintendo and some of the updates around guidelines that they've posted up on their website, whether it's for tournaments or sharing content online. What do you think of some of the changes? And then also, what about Metal Gear Solid 4? Do you think it could be there in Volume 2? And then what we're seeing with Dothack, this website that's popped up with the countdown, do you think we're really going to see a collection of those first 4 games? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.